Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is so good to be back with you guys. It's so good to be talking more football. It's so nice that actual meaningful football is going to be on in a little less than a week. And I'm glad to bring you this video today because we're going to be talking the 2024 rookie draft class and re-ranking these guys. I know some might be controversial, but we're going to look and see just how far some guys have moved up the board, down the board, and how different their future outlook seems from, how it was just a year ago when they were coming into the NFL for their rookie seasons. So with that being said, let's get into it. All right, so I'm not going to waste any time with the 101 in a tier by himself, and it is going to be Jaden freaking Daniels. And need I say more? We saw what he came out and did in his rookie year, averaging 21 fantasy points per game. He was a monster. This was, I think, fifth in the league in points per game as a rookie. Showed this already 20 plus points per game upside, and showed that he is a monster on the ground, which is massive in terms of separating yourself at the quarterback position from the pack. And if we look at fantasy points per dropback, he is fourth on this list, just behind Hurts, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, the three guys who have been monsters at the top of the league in terms of fantasy points at the quarterback position for the last couple of years. His 0.59 fantasy points per dropback is just following them, like I said. And this metric is used as probably the best predictor for future fantasy points per game, and the really only stable metric we can look at because just how much passing metrics fluctuate year to year. So Daniels is in a great spot. He takes the Commanders to the NFC Championship in his rookie year, pretty much drags them on his back, knocks off the Lions in the second round, the number one overall seed, just blows them out of the water. Puts up 40 plus points in that game. And we love the outlook of Daniels because of what's around him and what the Commanders are building. They go out and they trade for Larry Tunsil. They draft another lineman in the first round in the draft. They go out and trade for Deebo Samuel. They already have Terry McLaurin there. So he has already a pretty good, stable weaponry around him to just build on a second year. They have shown that they are more than willing to put all the necessary pieces around him to protect him on the offensive line. The Commanders are looking really good for next year, and Daniels is my 101. He is my number one overall player in Dynasty Fantasy Football, and it's not close. And the only guys that I would really trade him for, which I really don't even think about trading him at all, is just for like a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, and only if I got a plus on top of them. So I don't think there's much more that needs to be said about Jane Daniels. He's a monster. He's the best player in Dynasty. He's incredible, and his future outlook is looking incredible. The easy 101, Jane Daniels is the man. At my 102, and once again, a tier by himself, unanimously, is going to be the rookie wide receiver Malik Neighbors from the New York Giants. I mean, I really don't think there needs to be much said about him as well. The conversation for Neighbors is quite simple. He has already proven himself to be QB proof. I mean, he had Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito throwing in the ball last year, and he still averaged 18.2 points per game, had a 33% targets per route run, a 35% team target share, which is ridiculous, a 2.26 yards per route run, an 87.1 PFF grade, which these metrics have only been, marked by guys like Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas over the last 10 years. So he is up there, and he has averaged the most points per game for a rookie over the last 10 years, topping all those guys like Jefferson and Chase, who we saw have, and Puka as well, have absolute monster rookie years. And you can even make the argument he is the dynasty wide receiver one in the middle of the first round of startups, just a monster. And if there is any semblance of good quarterback play from Russell Wilson this year, and if Jackson Dart is any good at all, we could see a Chase like season that we got from him last year with Neighbors. I mean, the ceiling is massive. He has blow up weeks, he has 10 plus catch weeks, he has 200 plus, yard potential on a week to week basis, and he is a monster. So Malik Neighbors is an easy argument for tier two at the 102. Just incredible, man. These types of talents don't come around very often. I think everybody can agree with me on that. With that being said, I'm just going to move on to tier three. Okay, so I think this is where the controversy starts for some people, and this is just my opinion, but I have two guys in this next tier in tier three, and my 103, just in front of the guy at 104, is going to be Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver for the Jaguars. I mean, man. He was a monster in year one. He averaged 16.7 points per game, 2.45 yards per route run, had a 18.4 PFF grade. He was third in the league in receiving yards as a rookie with Mac Jones throwing him the ball. That is ridiculous. He didn't have Trevor Lawrence for most of the year, and he is one of only 6 players to average 16 plus points per game per season over the last 10 years. And those guys are Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas, Malik Neighbors, and Puka Nakua. I mean, if you're on that list, you're in elite territory. He's got Liam Cohen, and a guy who we saw at Tampa Bay just run an absolutely high-powered offense. They draft Travis Hunter with the second overall pick to go on the opposite side of him to kind of help take pressure off of him. And I have very high hopes for Brian Thomas Jr. So I think the upside is 20 plus, 22 plus points per game, kind of like we've seen from CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. The sky is the limit for Brian Thomas Jr. in year two, and he is my 103. All right, so some of you might be surprised why this guy's at 104, but just in my opinion, there's no diss to him, but Brock Bowers is going to be my second guy in this tier, and he had quite possibly the greatest season we've seen all time. First in targets, second in target share, first in catches, first in receiving yards. He finished us the tight end three in points per game, just behind Kittle and McBride, but just barely by like point 0.3 or point 0.4. He only scored 5 touchdowns, which is where I think he has a lot of room for improvement, and where we have kind of seen and where we can kind of predict some untapped upside. Uh, we have seen some great tight ends in the past, like Kyle Pitts and Sam Laporta, come in and have great rookie seasons. But they haven't turned out as well. Sam Laporta had a down second year. Kyle Pitts is Kyle Pitts. Don't really need to talk about him, but he gives you a significant advantage. And over the next 6 to 8 years, that is going to be incredibly valuable, especially in tight end premium leagues. He's going to give you an advantage every single week, especially if he continues to do what he did in his rookie season. I love what the Raiders have done in the offseason. They already have a really good offensive line. They bring in Geno Smith. They draft Ashton Genty with the number 6 overall pick. They take Jack Besh in the second round. They have Jacoby Myers there. I think this offense is going to be significantly improved. They bring in Chip Kelly from Ohio State. We know he likes to run an up-tempo offense, run a lot of plays. They bring in Pete Carroll as the head coach. So, man, the Raiders have a great outlook for this next year, and I think Brock Bowers is going to eat. And the reason for me having Bowers behind Brian Thomas Jr. is because I just don't value the tight end position as much as other people. I know people honestly might even throw Brock Bowers at the 102, which is a little crazy to me. And even in tight end premium leagues, um, I totally understand him, being in front of those guys. But I think that Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. have just a sky high ceiling and can reach the levels of Jamar Chase, and nobody can really touch those players in fantasy at all. So Brock Bowers is comfortably at 104. He's incredible. I love the Raiders' outlook this next year. They're going to be an improved offense, and Brock Bowers, if we can see him have a Travis Kelce type, 100 catch, 1,400 yards, 10 plus touchdown season, then I think I might think about moving him in front of Brian Thomas Jr. But until I see that, I'm not going to do it. I'd have to see it first. And Travis Kelce is in a league of his own. He's really the only guy to really touch those numbers, other than Rob Gronkowski. So we'll wait and see if Brock Bowers is that dude. But for now, he's the best tight end in football, maybe other than George Kittle, and he's the best tight end in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And everybody should love him. I'm sorry if people are annoyed by this, but I don't value the tight end position as much as other people. Okay, so I have 3 guys in this next tier as my 105 through 107, and you can kind of put them in any order that you want, but I'm going to do my best to rank them how I would draft them if we did a redraft today. And I'm going to have Drake May at my 105. And the reasoning for that is, despite playing in one of the worst offenses in the league last year, having no offensive line, nobody to throw to, his best, receiving option was Demario Douglas or Hunter Henry, depending on how you look at it. But when he played a full game last year, he averaged 16 and a half points per game. He had 420 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So he has a really nice rushing upside, a really nice rushing floor that, like we talked about with Jane Daniels, can really increase your ceiling if you have the requisite talent around you, which I think the Patriots did really well bringing in for Drake May this offseason. They hire Mike Vrabel as the head coach, who was shown to be a winner pretty much everywhere he's been. They added Travion Henderson in the second round, Stephon Diggs in free agency, Will Campbell at the 4th overall pick, more help on the offensive line. They drafted Kyle Williams, one of my favorite wide receivers in this past draft, in the third round, and they have shown that they are willing to invest around Drake May and do everything they possibly can to help him succeed. And I'm pretty big on the Patriots this year because secretly, they are an 8.5 win team over under this year, which is actually incredible for a team who just drafted fourth overall. And there is some optimism that this team can be quite good this year. And if this offense is just league average, then we can see Drake May rise up to, you know, the beginning of startups this year, kind of right next to Jalen Hurts. He can creep up very far, very quickly, just based on the pedigree of prospect that he was and, his future outlook in general. Because the Patriots are only going to build on this from now, and they're only going to put better and better weapons around him. They're only going to improve from here. We hope at least, but I think the outlook is really good for him right now. He's got good pieces around him for the moment. They're only going to improve from here. So Drake May is my 105, and I'm super happy to trade for him, to draft him everywhere because the ceiling is there. Rushing upside, rushing upside, rushing upside is king. And in my 106, one of my favorite players in the NFL right now, one of my favorite players to own in Dynasty, Lad McConkey. And it feels like Lad should be higher, and it just shows just how stacked this class was looking back a year ago. It's even better than we thought it was going to be. And it was elevated by guys like Lad, who coming in as a prospect, we weren't so sure on. He was kind of like a question mark just because of, his injury history in college. He was drafted in the second round. He wasn't even a first rounder. So we didn't really know. He was going into this Chargers offense who had a lot of question marks around it, but talent rises to the top at the end. And Lad McConkey averaged 15.1 points per game in his rookie season, 2.59 yards per route run, 85 PFF grade, 11.6 first downs per route run, which is incredible. He is a reception perception darling. Matt Harmon loves him. He wins all over the field, all three levels. And the only thing that I think is keeping him from, being in the tier with BTJ is just the Chargers offense in general. And we know Greg Roman likes to run the ball. They go out and they draft Omarion Hampton in the first round. And then they take Trey Harris in the second round, which I don't think is going to eat into Lad McConkey's role at all. I think he's going to be a field stretcher. I think Lad is going to eat. He's going to be the number one target, and his ceiling could possibly be even higher this year. And if we see Lad, get 130, 140 targets this year, he could easily be a, mid wide receiver one, 18, 19, 20 points per game guy, just because of how efficient he is. And if the Chargers even think about throwing more this year, and if they, are league average in neutral pass rate and pass rate over expected, then we could see Lad have a massive year two, and I have big expectations for him regardless this year. I think the offense, like I said, is going to be significantly improved. The offensive line is good. Marion Hampton coming in. We love Justin Herbert at quarterback. We love any wide receiver that is attached to Justin Herbert, and it just elevates your ceiling even more. I am super high on Lad, and if he shows that he can, be 140, 150 target guy this year, then he's going to jump in that tier with Brian Thomas Jr. and fly up draft boards just like he did in his rookie season. So the only thing I'm worried about is the volume in this offense and just how much the Chargers will throw. And the only thing holding Lad McConkey back is Greg Roman, unfortunately. So with that being said, let's get on to the 107, and we're going to talk about Caleb Williams, who just a year ago was the 101 consensus in Dynasty rookie draft, especially if you're in a Superflex league. He had his struggles last year. I get it, but I'm willing to give him a pass. He had a terrible offensive line. I understand that he held the ball way too much last year, but Shane Waldron was his offensive coordinator. He was just awful. The head coach there wasn't very good. This entire team was a disaster. And this offseason, we have Ben Johnson coming in from the Lions, who, orchestrated one of the best offenses for the last 3 years and with the Lions, and pretty much resurrected Jared Goff's career. And I trust him more than anything. And if you saw Caleb Williams at USC and the talent that he was coming out of the draft, just being the consensus, 101 in drafts, and also, the number one overall pick in the draft, how large that prospect pedigree is. So 15 points per game isn't what we were hoping for in his rookie season, but I am going to once again trust Ben Johnson and the pieces they have put around Caleb Williams. They invested in the offensive line very, very heavily. They have DJ Moore. They have Rome Odunze, who they took top 10 last year. Then they go this year and they take Colston Loveland with the 10th overall pick at tight end, and they go once again and take Luther Burden, a guy who I thought should have been a first rounder, and they take him 39th overall, investing even more into Caleb Williams in this offense. And dude, Caleb is set up to succeed. And if he fails this year, he has nobody to blame but himself. And the Bears have done everything they can to protect him, to put weapons around him. But once again, I think that, you know, Ben Johnson is going to do wonders for this team. And, pretty sneakily, Caleb Williams has some really nice rushing upside. He had almost 500 yards rushing last season. And if the dude can, fall in the end zone 5 to 6 times, and if he is the caliber of quarterback that we think he is coming out of college and he just explodes this year, he legitimately has, you know, right next to Jaden Daniels and startups type of ceiling. I mean, he could be possibly, he has it in him, the next Patrick Mahomes if all things go well, if all things click. But until then, he's going to be my 107. I still really love Caleb Williams. I'm super invested in this Bears offense this next season, and I'm really, really high on him. And it just shows, once again, how good this rookie class is, him being in the mid first round of this redraft. Okay, this is where it gets tough for me. And in tier five, I have 4 guys here. And like I said, you can put these in any order that you want. At 108, I'm going to have Bo Nix. And this may be a little controversial, but I honestly don't think you can argue with the fact that the guy came out in his rookie year, who was not a high thought of prospect. A lot of people didn't even think he would go first round last year. The Broncos come out and take him 12th overall, which surprised everybody. Which, like, Sean Payton's guy, he was hoping he would be there. He was trying to trick teams into trading up so they could get Bo Nix later. And Bo Nix averaged 18.7 points per game. He was top 10 at the position as a rookie. But the only argument that I have against Bo Nix is the fact that if he comes out and he disappoints this year, I think that his value will plummet more than a guy like Caleb Williams and Jane Daniels and Drake May would be, just because of the caliber prospect that he was. And people are going to be louder than ever just about, like, oh, we were right about him. He's a check down king. He's the same guy we saw at Oregon or Auburn. I think that is the only thing holding Bo Nix back from having this, ceiling of climbing up into first round startup range. And I think he could plummet more than these other guys. So that's the only thing that worries me. But they came out and they took R.J. Harvey in the second round. They have Cortland Sutton there. They have a really, really, really good offensive line. They come in and they bring in Evan Ingram. They draft Pat Bryant in the third round. The pieces aren't as good around him, but the offensive line is going to protect him. He's got Sean Payton there. I trust that. And, there's high hopes for Bo Nix in his second year. And I think the outlook is good just on how good he was in his rookie season. So, big ups for Bo Nix. Props to him for being as good as he was, because honestly, a lot of people didn't expect much, and he came out and he blew expectations out of the water. So good on him. My 108. And moving on to my 109 here, I'm going to talk about a guy who did quite the opposite. There was massive expectations for him, and he came out and he massively disappointed. And he was the consensus 102 last year, and that is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., the Cardinals wide receiver, the Ohio State, prodigy coming out, who we all thought was the prince who was promised. And this one hurts because, man, I was burned last year, and I drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot. And luckily, I got off of him when I did, because I own no Marvin Harrison Jr. anymore. And I don't think that you should be worried about if you own him, but he was a little disappointing. And I think the expectations were a little unfair. He averaged 11.6 points per game. He had a 77.2 PFF grade, a 1.63 yards per route run, just a 7.9 first downs per route one, which isn't great. The underlying metrics aren't great, but what is even worse for me is just how bad his connection was with Kyler last year, and how they were not able to connect at all. Their chemistry was terrible. The Cardinals also didn't move him around the formation at all. They had him running go routes as just the sacrificial X wide receiver. They didn't utilize his ability across the middle and to utilize him on routes that he really excelled at in college. So I want to see the Cardinals be just a little more creative within this upcoming season and move him around the formation. And he looked a little slow at times last year, so let's get him in position to succeed instead of just sticking him on the outside and having him run go routes and having these timing routes with Kyler, which frankly he isn't the best at as a quarterback. So I think that the Kyler's best attribute. I think that Kyler's best attributes don't really match up as well with what Marvin Harrison does best. So I think that's going to take some time to mesh a little bit, but it's unfortunate to see a guy who was at the 102 last year drop this far down, but I still have hope in Marvin Harrison Jr. Matt Harmon, was optimistic about him and kind of compared him to, CeeDee Lamb in his rookie season. And if you want to look for, a silver lining, that's it. CeeDee Lamb is one of the best wide receivers in football, one of the best wide receivers in Dynasty Fantasy Football right now. And Marvin Harrison Jr. was an incredible prospect. And I think that there's a lot of hope for him. So I am absolutely not giving up on him, but I have him this low and I'm a little worried going into a second season. And I think it may take one more year. And at 110, I'm going to have JJ McCarthy. That may surprise some people, and I'm going to have him ahead of Bucky Irving, who we'll talk about in just one moment. But the reason I have JJ McCarthy here is just solely based on what we saw Sam Darnold do last year in this same offense. A guy who was one of the biggest busts in NFL history, and Sam Darnold, with the Jets, bounced around to the Panthers, and then all of a sudden comes in last year with the Vikings under Kevin O'Connell, throws for 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns, averages 18 points per game, and was really, really good just out of nowhere. And we've seen this before with guys who have come in and played for the Vikings. After Kirk Cousins got hurt a couple of years ago and tore his Achilles, we saw all these random quarterbacks come in and succeed because of Kevin O'Connell and the offense and the foundation that is built around this offense. So I think more than anybody in the league, JJ McCarthy is set up to succeed, and he is set up to absolutely crush now and in the future. And I think he can unlock a part of this offense that Sam Darnold couldn't, just because of his legs and his ability to, scramble, to extend plays. And dude, he has Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones in the backfield, Jordan Mason as well, who they just traded for, a good offensive line. They went and took an offensive line in the first round. They have one of the best play callers in the NFL, possibly the best play caller in the NFL, and their head coach, Kevin O'Connell. And he's set up to massively succeed this next season. And I think if you looked at what Sam Darnold did last year, there's heavy optimism that JJ McCarthy can take that to a whole nother level, and that is why I have him here. I know we haven't seen him play at all, but I believe in the talent. I believe in Kevin O'Connell, and that is solely why I have him in front of my 111, who I also love, and the player we're going to talk about right now, and that's going to be Bucky Irving. And it's crazy that we have Bucky Irving here just because of how good of a rookie he was last year. And in a pretty weak rookie class, we saw Bucky Irving rise to the top and pretty significantly. And we saw him average 14.4 points per game while only playing on above 50% of the snaps 4 times all of last year. He shared time with Rachaad White, but he was fourth in yards created, second in yards created per touch, third in juke rate, fifth in evaded tackles. He caught 47 passes. He had over 1,500 total yards as a rookie. Just a monster in all facets of the game. And he did most of this, like I said, while splitting the backfield with Rachaad White. But most importantly, Bucky Irving has even more room to grow in year two, because we saw last year, at the end of last year, the Buccaneers, when it mattered most, they gave Bucky Irving 70+% of the snaps in weeks 18 and 19 when their season was on the line and when they needed him the most. And it showed that he is going to be the guy in this offense. We know just how good second-year running backs can be, and guys who, had 1,500 total yards in their rookie year, their ceiling, their play can only go up from here. Their ceiling can only be higher from here. And I love Bucky Irving, man. I don't care what type of prospect he was coming out. I don't care what he ran in the 40. I don't care, how he pretty much crushed his entire pedigree at the combine in general. I do not care. When a guy comes out and dominates the NFL in a, split backfield in his rookie season, that is a reason to throw that all out the window, just like we did with a guy like Puka Nacua. Some guys are just outliers. Bucky Irving is it. He is my 111, somehow all the way down here, just based on my preference. But Bucky Irving, to me, is the top 7 running back in Dynasty Fantasy Football right now, a monster who you need to be trading for if you have guys who are non-believers in your league, and a guy who has massive upside this next year and who can really climb up even more in rankings. And it hurts to have him this low, but I love Bucky Irving, and you should too. And that is going to be the end of tier 5. Bucky Irving is my 111. So let's move on to tier 6. And for the last tier, we are going to have 112 to 202 because, quite honestly, I cannot choose between these three players. And I think that you can make an argument for any three of them to be, the last spot in the first round. But for me personally, I am going to have Rome Odunze as my 112. And this one hurts a ton. I will not lie because last year I was so high on Rome Odunze coming out. And the underlying metrics, I won't lie, for Rome don't look great after his rookie season. He had some daunting ones. I mean, he was a 8.8.5 point per game guy. He 1.18 yards per out run, 65.3 PFF grade, a less than 6% first downs per out run. Just not great. He played a lot of snaps. That's good to see. But man, I mean, you compare his rookie numbers to a lot of the guys the last 10 years, and you start to worry a little bit. But I think one silver lining you can take from this, and one positive that you can take from this situation, is the fact that Shane Waldron was his offensive coordinator. The Bears were a mess last year. Nobody in this offense succeeded whatsoever. It was a total disaster. And we saw a wide receiver in a Shane Waldron offense just 2 years ago have this same disappointing rookie season in Jackson Smith and Jigba, who was a really highly touted prospect coming out of Ohio State, averaged a really low points per game, around the same metrics as Rome Odunze, and came back this last year and bounced back in a huge way. I mean, talent won out big time. And just for me personally, Rome Odunze went inside the top 10. I believe in the talent, the caliber prospect he is. Matt Harmon still is a huge believer on him. He loves Rome Odunze. I love Rome Odunze. The Bears love Rome Odunze. Ben Johnson coming in, I think, is massive for him. And I think it is the best possible thing that could have happened for the Bears and Rome Odunze specifically. So I personally have him here. You could, argue these next two guys to be ahead of him, but just how much believer I am in Rome Odunze, he's my guy, and I got to have him here. So he's going to be my 112. At my 201, I have Xavier Worthy, the Chiefs wide receiver. And I feel like I may get a ton of pushback, a ton of hate for this one. But oh well, honestly, I have Xavier Worthy a little bit farther down my rankings than other people. And although I have moved him up recently due to the Rashee Rice news and the knucklehead that he is, I honestly, in reality, just wasn't really impressed with what I saw in Xavier Worthy in his rookie season. And although he did produce down the stretch, he did all of this, without Rashee Rice most of the season and with a 34, 35-year-old Travis Kelce who kind of looks done at this point. And without those, with those players, being one out of their prime and Rashee Rice only playing 3 games of the season, Worthy only had 98 targets. He had 59 catches for 638 yards. And I know he scored quite a bit of touchdowns, but objectively, it was a pretty mid rookie year without Rice and with an aging Kelce. So he averaged 11 points per game. He had a 71.6 PFF grade, which is okay. A 1.51 yards per out run, which is right there with Keon Coleman. Not great. An 18.6 targets per out run, and just over an 8% first downs per out run. They're okay numbers, but just not something I'm super excited about, especially when you're attached to Patrick Mahomes, and they were missing all these weapons last year for most of the season, and just not a whole lot of target competition. And I know it's going to seem pretty hypocritical, which I just told you about Rome Odunze, about his awful numbers in his rookie season, but I'm more of a believer in the talent of Rome Odunze than I am Xavier Worthy. And we saw last season that the role that Xavier Worthy excelled in the most was this, slot role, this low A dot where he was catching short screens and, they're utilizing him in space, which is good. I think is awesome. And this Rashee Rice expansion may help him solidify his role on the Chief for maybe his entire career. Maybe it could really change the trajectory of his career and his role in this Chiefs offense and with Patrick Mahomes. And if he connects with Patrick Mahomes a couple times this year and a couple times last year, I think we could be talking about his rookie year completely differently. But he didn't. I also just don't love the play style of Xavier Worthy compared to other receivers. And I think it really caps his upside because he really struggles against press. If we look at, his reception perception, he doesn't separate very well against man. He's 20% or lower in both categories, according to reception perception. And you really want to see, these spots in his game significantly improve before you start vaulting him up, especially in this redraft, but in dynasty rankings in general, because he's pretty small stature. We know he has that incredible speed, but especially going over the middle, man, and just as a separator in general, you want to see him be better in that area to put up massive fantasy numbers. And just he doesn't have that in his game right now. And until I see that, I'm not going to overpay for him. I am not going to put him higher just because he's attached to Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to jump the gun and whatever. So I love Xavier Worthy. Hook him, man. Huge Texas Longhorn fan here. Love Xavier Worthy at Texas, but just a little bit more down on the talent in general compared to Roma Dunze and, in this draft class. So, but he is the 201 respectively, and there is a lot of upside for him, a lot of room to improve. So we'll see what happens with Xavier Worthy going into year two. A lot of people are excited. So it's going to be fun to see him this next season and see what he does. And finally, at our 202, we're going to have Michael Penix Jr. And I don't think I'm going to have as much pushback on this one. I think Michael Penix in his smaller sample size, he only played 3 games. We saw Kirk Cousins just be absolutely awful last year. And Michael Penix, he came in and he showed some life in this offense. And I love what the Falcons have around him. They have a really solid offensive line. They have Drake London, who's one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. Darnell Mooney on the other side of him, which is solid. Kyle Pitts, whatever he is. John Robinson in the backfield is awesome. Already one of the best running backs in the NFL, so he has that to fall back on. And, you know, like I said, there are some solid pieces around him. And I think that there's some room for Penix to kind of jump up in rankings if he shows that, he is a solid quarterback going into year two. And I think he can, maybe move up a little bit, but I think his upside is capped just because of his lack of, rushing ability and scrambling ability. And he really just doesn't do much on the ground. He is mostly going to be a pocket passer, you know, a lot like Kirk Cousins, the guy that he kind of took over for. He's going to be pretty much a statue back there. He has the ability to run, but he had some injuries in college and in the past that probably keep him from doing that. So until we see kind of a change there, I'm going to have Michael Penix much lower than other people. I love his gunslinging ability. He has a beautiful deep ball as a lefty. It's fun to watch. So Michael Penix is going to end it off here. And, man, this rookie class was just incredible in general. And even looking back, some of these guys like Bucky Irving and Ladd McConkey, and especially like Brian Thomas Jr., and how good Bo Nix was in his rookie season, vaulted this class to like one of the better classes we've seen in a long, long time. So there's a lot to be excited about for all these guys. And, some of them have some more upside than others, but still, this class was incredible. I'm super excited to see what these guys do in year two. And shoot, maybe even next year we'll take a look back and re-rank these guys again and see how things have changed again in the second season. So anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for coming out today. I am excited once again that we have football coming up soon, and I'm excited to just, get this year underway. It's so nice to have football back. So with that being said, I hope you guys have a great day. Hope you guys are doing well, and I will see you guys next time.